The golden morning sun cast long shadows across the vast estate of Maxwell Thornhill, illuminating the countless acres of perfectly manicured grass that seemed to stretch to the horizon. In the center of it all stood a state-of-the-art equestrian facility that would make professional trainers weep with envy. The main stable, with its gleaming wood and polished brass fixtures, housed 30 of the world's finest thoroughbreds, each worth more money than most people would see in a lifetime. But it was the isolated structure at the far edge of the property that drew everyone's attention that morning. Built apart from the main stables, this smaller but equally immaculate building held just one occupant, a magnificent black stallion named Tempest. The horse's reputation had spread throughout the equestrian world, becoming something of a legend among those who trained and handled horses for a living. Maxwell Thornhill stood by the paddock fence, his tailored suit immaculate despite the early hour, platinum watch glinting in the sunlight as he checked the time with obvious impatience. At 57, he had the sharp features and cold eyes of someone who had spent a lifetime getting exactly what he wanted. His silver hair was perfectly styled, not a strand out of place despite the gentle breeze. Behind him, a row of sleek vehicles lined the private driveway, belonging to the collection of renowned horse trainers who had assembled at his invitation. "Gentlemen," he addressed the group with a voice accustomed to command, "I appreciate you coming on such short notice." His thin smile never reached his eyes as he surveyed the 12 men before him, each known for their extraordinary abilities with difficult horses. "As you know, I've acquired the finest equine specimens from across the globe, but Tempest—" He gestured toward the isolated stable. "Tempest remains my greatest challenge and disappointment." The stallion in question appeared as if summoned by his name, emerging from the stable with 2 handlers struggling to control him. Even from a distance, his magnificence was undeniable. 17 hands of pure muscle, coat black as midnight and gleaming like silk under the morning sun. His movements were poetry, fluid and powerful, but the wildness in his eyes was unmistakable. The handlers kept a respectful distance as they guided him into the paddock, their tension visible in every movement. 3 years, Thornhill continued, watching the stallion with a mixture of admiration and frustration. 3 years since I purchased him from that Bedouin trader for a sum that would buy a small island. He claimed Tempest came from a rare desert bloodline, horses that carried ancient warrior kings into battle. I've employed 6 world-class trainers. None have succeeded in breaking him. One of the trainers, a weathered man with sun-leathered skin, spoke up. "Mr. Thornhill, with respect, some horses simply can't be broken. It's in their nature to resist." Thornhill's cold laugh cut through the morning air. "Everything and everyone has a price, Mr. Harmon. It's simply a matter of finding it." He turned to address the entire group. "Which brings me to why you're all here today. I'm offering $10 million to the man who can break Tempest, make him rideable, responsive, and ready for competition within 3 months." A murmur rippled through the assembled trainers. Even for these wealthy professionals, $10 million was an astronomical sum. "You can use any methods you see fit," Thornhill continued. "I don't care about your techniques as long as the horse remains physically unharmed. His value is in his bloodline and his spirit. I want that spirit controlled, not destroyed." The trainers exchanged glances, some calculating, others skeptical. Tempest's reputation had spread far and wide. The horse had sent 3 men to the hospital, one with injuries that ended his career. Some called the stallion demon-possessed. Others claimed he was simply too wild for domestication. As Thornhill outlined the specific terms of his offer, a battered pickup truck with a small horse trailer rattled up the long driveway, looking painfully out of place among the luxury vehicles. It stopped at a respectful distance, and a young man stepped out, his movements unhurried and deliberate. Thornhill's security team immediately moved toward the intruder, but the millionaire held up a hand, watching with curious irritation as the young man approached. He appeared to be in his early 30s, dressed in worn jeans, work boots, and a simple button-down shirt with rolled sleeves. Nothing about him suggested wealth or prestige, yet he carried himself with quiet confidence as he walked directly toward the gathering. "This is a private meeting," Thornhill said, not bothering to hide his disdain as the man reached the group. "I heard about your offer," the stranger replied, his voice surprisingly gentle. His eyes, however, weren't on Thornhill but on Tempest, watching the stallion with a focus that seemed to exclude everything else. One of Thornhill's assistants stepped forward. "Sir, this is Noah Reed. He called yesterday about the position. I explained we were only considering established trainers with documented credentials." Thornhill's eyebrow arched as he studied the newcomer more carefully. "And yet here you are, Mr. Reed, without an invitation." "Here I am," Noah agreed, still watching the stallion, who had become strangely still, his ears pricked forward as if suddenly interested in the proceedings. "Do you have any idea who these men are?" Thornhill gestured to the assembled trainers. "Olympic medalists, trainers to royalty, men who have developed champions across disciplines. What could you possibly offer that they cannot?" For the first time, Noah's eyes shifted from the horse to Thornhill. They were a striking blue, clear and direct. "Nothing, probably. But I'd like the chance to work with him anyway." Thornhill laughed, and several of the trainers joined in. "The chance to work with him? Young man, Tempest has nearly killed men with decades more experience than you appear to have. What makes you think you'd fare any better?" Noah didn't reply immediately. Instead, he turned his attention back to the stallion, who was now pacing the paddock fence line closest to where the man stood. The handlers tensed, ready to intervene if the horse's increasingly agitated movements turned dangerous. "Because he's not mean," Noah finally said. "He's terrified." The simple statement hung in the air, drawing scoffs from several of the professional trainers. "That animal isn't afraid of anything," said one, a heavyset man with multiple championship rings adorning his fingers. "He's dominant and aggressive. Needs a firm hand to show him who's boss." Noah shook his head slightly but didn't argue. Instead, he addressed Thornhill directly. "Give me a chance with him. Not for the money, but for his sake." Something in the young man's demeanor, perhaps his complete lack of intimidation in the face of Thornhill's obvious power, caught the millionaire's interest. A faint smile touched his lips. "For his sake," Thornhill repeated. "How charmingly sentimental." He studied Noah for a moment longer, then shrugged. "Why not? You might provide some entertainment value at least. The same terms apply to you as to everyone else. 3 months to produce a rideable horse. If you succeed, which you won't, you get the 10 million. The professionals exchanged glances, some amused, others annoyed at the inclusion of this nobody in their exclusive opportunity. Noah simply nodded, his focus already back on Tempest, who had stopped pacing and was standing utterly still, nostrils flared as he stared at the newcomer. "We start tomorrow," Thornhill announced to the group. "Each of you will be assigned specific time slots with the horse. My staff will provide accommodations for those who need them." He turned to leave, then paused beside Noah. "As for you, Mr. Reed, I hope you have good health insurance. You're going to need it." With that parting shot, Thornhill strode away, followed by his entourage of assistants and security personnel. The trainers dispersed toward their vehicles, some casting curious or dismissive glances at Noah, who remained by the fence, still engaged in that silent exchange with the magnificent black stallion. As the noise of departing vehicles faded, one of the handlers approached Noah cautiously. "You're either very brave or very stupid," he said. "That horse isn't just difficult, he's dangerous." Noah finally tore his gaze away from Tempest. "What's his routine like? What has he experienced since arriving here?" The handler seemed surprised by the practical questions. "He gets the best of everything: premium feed, daily turnout, regular vet care. Mr. Thornhill spares no expense. But training sessions..." He shook his head. "They haven't gone well. The methods keep getting more extreme as trainers get more frustrated." Noah nodded, a shadow crossing his features. "And where did Mr. Thornhill get him?" The handler glanced around nervously, as if worried about being overheard despite Thornhill's departure. "Bought him from some traders in Morocco, I think. Story goes that the horse belonged to a Bedouin chieftain who refused to sell him, no matter the price. Then suddenly the horse was available. He shrugged. Mr. Thornhill gets what Mr. Thornhill wants. That's all I know. Noah nodded, his eyes returning to Tempest, who remained at the fence line watching him. Does he have a favorite treat? Something he's allowed to have? Apples, the handler replied with a hint of surprise at the mundane question. But don't try hand-feeding him. He bit the last trainer who attempted that. Nearly took off 2 fingers. I appreciate the warning, Noah said quietly. I'll be here at dawn tomorrow. The handler gave him a look that suggested he thought Noah might not survive the week, then walked away to help his colleague return Tempest to his separate stable. Noah watched until they disappeared, then turned and walked slowly back to his modest truck and trailer. Unlike the gleaming vehicles of the other trainers, his rig showed years of hard use. Dents and patches of rust spoke of countless miles on back roads, and the small living quarters attached to the horse trailer had clearly seen better days. He climbed into the driver's seat and sat for a moment, taking in the opulence of Thornhill's estate. People with that kind of wealth existed in a different reality, one where anything could be bought, including a horse's submission. Noah started the engine, which protested briefly before catching, and drove down the long, winding driveway, past the security gate, and onto the main road. 20 minutes later, he pulled into a modest roadside motel that had seen its heyday sometime in the early 80s. The neon sign advertising vacancy flickered erratically in the growing dusk. Noah checked in at the front desk, where a middle-aged woman with kind eyes handed him a key. Room 12, end of the row, she said. You here for work or just passing through? Work, Noah replied with a small smile. I'll be staying at least a few days, maybe longer. Must be at the Thornhill place, she said, surprising him. Only employer around here that brings in out-of-towners. My nephew works in their gardening crew. Says the owner's an absolute tyrant, but the pay's too good to quit. Noah nodded but offered no details. Is there somewhere I can get dinner around here? She directed him to a diner across the street, and after parking his rig in front of his room, Noah walked over. The place was nearly empty at this hour, the dinner rush not yet begun. He took a booth by the window and ordered coffee while studying a worn leather journal he'd pulled from his pocket. The waitress returned with his coffee and took his order, just a burger and fries, then gestured to the journal. You a writer? Noah glanced up, momentarily startled from his concentration. No, ma'am, just notes for work. She nodded and moved on to other customers, leaving Noah to his thoughts and the pages filled with careful observations written in a neat, compact script. Some entries included sketches, horses in various positions, details of tack and training equipment. He flipped to a blank page and began writing notes from his brief observation of Tempest, occasionally pausing to sip his cooling coffee. He was still writing when his food arrived, and he set the journal aside reluctantly to eat. Through the window, he could see his truck and the small attached trailer. Unlike the luxurious rigs of Thornhill's other trainers, Noah's trailer had room for just one horse, and the living quarters were barely larger than a closet, just enough space for a narrow bunk and minimal storage. As he ate, his mind drifted to the stallion, Tempest. The name certainly fit what he'd glimpsed in those brief moments. Power barely contained, a wild energy that had been misunderstood as aggression. Noah had seen the scars on the horse's flanks, telltale marks left by harsh bits and spurs. No wonder the animal fought human contact. After finishing his meal, Noah returned to his motel room and spent the next hour unpacking the few items he'd need for his stay. Clothes simple and functional, a few books and a wooden box containing specialized training tools he'd crafted himself. Then he showered and lay down on the bed, setting his alarm for 4:30 a.m. Sleep didn't come easily. His mind kept returning to the challenge ahead, to the magnificent stallion with the haunted eyes. Noah had encountered many difficult horses in his life, but something about Tempest was different. The stallion's reputation had spread through professional circles, untrainable, dangerous, possessed. But in that brief moment of connection at the fence, Noah had seen something else entirely. Dawn was just breaking when Noah arrived at Thornhill's estate the following morning. The security guard at the gate checked his name against a list, looking surprised to find it there. He directed Noah to park near the isolated stable where Tempest was housed, away from the main complex. As Noah pulled up, he noticed he was the first to arrive. Good. He'd hoped for some quiet time to observe the horse before the parade of professional trainers began their sessions. He grabbed a small bag from his truck and walked to the paddock fence, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. Tempest was already outside, pacing the perimeter of his enclosure with the fluid movement of a predator. The stallion's head came up immediately at Noah's approach, nostrils flaring as he caught the man's scent. His ears pinned back, a clear warning. Noah didn't approach the fence. Instead, he simply stood at a respectful distance and waited. After a few minutes, he sat down on the ground, cross-legged, and pulled an apple from his bag. Without looking directly at the horse, he cut it with a small pocket knife and began to eat a slice, his movements unhurried. Tempest continued pacing, but his path gradually shifted, bringing him closer to where Noah sat. His ears flicked forward occasionally, curiosity momentarily overriding caution. Noah continued to eat his apple, one small piece at a time, seemingly oblivious to the stallion's interest. "You know," Noah said conversationally, his voice soft and even, "I've met horses like you before. Not many, but a few. Horses that have given up on humans." He took another bite of apple. "Can't say I blame you." Tempest had stopped pacing and stood about 30 feet away, watching Noah with intense focus. His nostrils flared as he caught the scent of the apple. "The problem with people," Noah continued in that same quiet voice, "is that they're in such a hurry. They want results now, submission now. They don't understand that trust takes time." He set the remaining apple slices on the ground beside him, then opened his journal and began to write, acting as if the stallion wasn't there at all. Minutes passed. Noah continued writing. Tempest remained still, watching. Then, with exquisite caution, the stallion took a step closer. Then, another. His movements were tense, ready to bolt at the slightest provocation. Noah kept his focus on his journal, only his peripheral vision tracking the horse's approach. When Tempest was about 15 feet away, Noah closed his journal and stood slowly. The stallion tensed, but didn't retreat. "That's enough for today," Noah said softly. "I'll see you tomorrow." He picked up his bag, leaving the apple slices on the ground, and walked unhurriedly back to his truck. As he was about to climb in, a voice called out, "What exactly do you think you're accomplishing?" Noah turned to see Maxwell Thornhill approaching, immaculately dressed despite the early hour. The millionaire's expression was a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "Just getting acquainted," Noah replied simply. Thornhill looked past him to where Tempest now stood at the fence, watching them. 3 years I've owned that horse, and I've never seen him approach anyone voluntarily." His cold eyes narrowed. "Who are you really, Mr. Reed? And what makes you think you can succeed where champions have failed?" Noah met his gaze steadily. "I'm exactly who I said I am. As for succeeding," he glanced back at Tempest, "that's up to him, not me." Thornhill's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "How charmingly naive. That animal is worth over $2 million. He doesn't get to decide anything." He checked his watch. "The others will be arriving soon for their sessions. I assume you'll want to observe your competition?" Noah considered the question before answering. "Yes, I think that would be helpful." Thornhill nodded, seeming pleased with the response. "Follow me then. The viewing area provides an excellent vantage point without disturbing the trainers." They walked in silence to a covered pavilion positioned to overlook the training arena. 2 men in suits, part of Thornhill's ever-present security detail, stood at a discreet distance. The millionaire settled into a leather chair and gestured for Noah to take the seat beside him. "The first session begins in 15 minutes, Thornhill said, accepting a cup of coffee from an attendant who appeared silently at his side. He didn't offer one to Noah. "Marcus Winters will be working with Tempest this morning. He's trained Olympic champions for over 20 years. Noah nodded but said nothing, his attention on the handlers leading Tempest into the arena. The stallion's body language had changed completely from the cautious curiosity he'd shown earlier. Now he moved with tense, jerky motions, head high, ears pinned back, eyes rolling to show the whites, classic signs of equine fear and agitation. "Interesting," Thornhill murmured, watching Noah more than the horse. "You don't strike me as a gambling man, Mr. Reed, but I'm curious. How much would you wager on your success?" "I don't bet on living beings," Noah replied, not taking his eyes off Tempest. "Ah, principles," Thornhill said with a small smile. "How refreshing. But surely you must have some idea of your chances against these world-class professionals." Before Noah could answer, Marcus Winters entered the arena. He was a tall, lean man with military posture and a commanding presence. Tempest immediately retreated to the farthest corner of the arena, but there was nowhere to hide in the circular space. Winters approached with confident strides, a whip in one hand and a bridle with a severe bit in the other. "First rule with a difficult horse," he announced, clearly aware of his audience. "Establish dominance immediately." What followed was painful to watch. Winters used a technique that involved driving the horse around the arena at speed, using the whip not to strike but to create sharp, startling noises. The goal was to exhaust the animal into submission. Tempest ran, his coal-black coat soon dark with sweat, his breathing labored. But each time Winters attempted to approach with the bridle, the stallion's fear turned to aggression. He reared, struck out with his hooves, and once charged directly at the trainer, who barely managed to dodge the attack. After 45 minutes, Winters called for a lunge line. When the handlers brought it, he managed to get it around Tempest's neck and used it to control the horse's movements more directly. The session ended with Tempest standing trembling, head down not in submission but in exhaustion, while Winters attached a lead rope to a halter they'd managed to force onto his head. "Progress," Winters announced, handing the lead to a handler. "Tomorrow we'll build on this foundation." As the stallion was led away, Noah noted the glazed look in his eyes. A horse pushed beyond fear into a state of hopeless resignation. It wasn't training. It was systematic breaking of spirit. "Impressive, isn't he?" Thornhill said, gesturing toward Winters as the trainer exited the arena. "He has a remarkable record with difficult cases." "How many of those cases were already traumatized before he started?" Noah asked quietly. Thornhill's eyebrows rose slightly. "You disapprove of his methods. I think they'll get you what you want eventually, a horse that allows itself to be ridden, but not because it trusts the rider or understands what's being asked, because it's given up fighting." "Results are results, Mr. Reed," Thornhill replied dismissively. "Not all of us have the luxury of infinite patience." The next 3 trainers used variations of the same approach: establish dominance, wear down resistance. By early afternoon, Tempest was barely responsive, moving mechanically through the exercises demanded of him. Noah watched it all in silence, making occasional notes in his journal. As the last session concluded, Thornhill stood. "I have meetings for the remainder of the day. Williams will show you out." He gestured to one of the suited men. "Your assigned time with Tempest begins tomorrow at 6 a.m. Do try not to get yourself killed." Noah nodded, tucking his journal into his pocket. "Mr. Thornhill, I have a request." The millionaire paused, looking surprised. "Yes?" "I'd like permission to sleep in my trailer on your property, near Tempest's stable. My methods require consistent presence, and the commute from town would complicate that." Thornhill studied him for a moment, then shrugged. "Williams, arrange it. Mr. Reed can park his conveyance near the West Maintenance buildings." With that, he strode away, already engrossed in something on his phone. An hour later, Noah had moved his truck and trailer to the designated area, far enough from the main house to be out of sight, but close enough to Tempest's separate stable to serve his purposes. Williams had provided him with a security pass that would allow him to move around certain parts of the property and informed him that he could use the staff facilities for showers and meals. As evening approached, Noah walked back to Tempest's paddock. The stallion had been returned to his enclosure after the day's training sessions, and he stood in the far corner, head low, still bearing the halter that Winters had forced on him. Even from a distance, the change in his demeanor was painful to see. The proud, spirited animal of the morning now looked defeated. Noah sat in the same spot as earlier, this time with his journal and a thermos of coffee. He didn't call to Tempest or try to attract his attention. He simply sat, wrote in his journal, and occasionally sipped his coffee as the sun began to set. After about 30 minutes, he heard a soft nickering. Looking up, he saw that Tempest had moved closer, though still keeping a safe distance. The stallion's ears were forward, his posture showing cautious interest rather than fear. "Rough day, wasn't it?" Noah said quietly. "I'm sorry about that." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a few sugar cubes, placing them on the ground in front of him, then returned to his writing. From the corner of his eye, he saw Tempest take a few tentative steps closer, then a few more. The stallion's nostrils flared as he caught the sweet scent. Noah remained still, giving no indication that he even noticed the horse's approach. Finally, Tempest came close enough to stretch his neck out and snatch a sugar cube from the ground. He retreated immediately, but not as far as before. After eating the treat, he approached again and took another. This pattern repeated until all the sugar was gone. Then, to Noah's surprise, Tempest remained nearby, watching him with what almost seemed like expectation. "That's all for now," Noah said softly. "But I'll be back in the morning, before they come for you. I promise." As if understanding, the stallion snorted once, then turned and walked with more energy than he'd shown all afternoon to the far side of the paddock, where he began to graze. Noah gathered his things and returned to his trailer, where he spent the evening preparing for the next day, carefully planning his approach. He knew the other trainers would continue their harsh methods, undoing whatever small progress he might make. It would be 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or worse. But Noah had dealt with difficult cases before, horses everyone else had given up on. The pre-dawn air was cool and misty as Noah made his way to Tempest's paddock the following morning. The estate was quiet, with only a few stable hands moving about their early chores. He carried a small pack containing apples, sugar cubes, and his ever-present journal. When he reached the paddock, Tempest was already alert, standing near the fence where Noah had sat the previous evening. "Good morning," Noah said softly, settling into his now familiar spot. The stallion's ears pricked forward at the sound of his voice. Unlike yesterday, there was no hesitation. Tempest approached the fence directly, though still maintaining a cautious distance. Noah smiled slightly and took out an apple, cutting it into slices with his pocket knife. He placed a few pieces on the ground near the fence, then sat back, opening his journal. Tempest came forward and delicately took the apple slices, then remained nearby, watching Noah with intelligent eyes. Noah began talking in a low, steady voice, not about anything in particular, just the weather, his plans for the day, observations about the sunrise. What mattered wasn't the content, but the tone and consistency, allowing the horse to become accustomed to his presence and voice. After about 20 minutes, Noah heard the sound of an approaching vehicle. Tempest heard it too. His head came up sharply, ears swiveling toward the sound, body instantly tense. "They're coming for your morning session," Noah said, standing slowly. "But I'll be here when they're finished. I promise." He gathered his things and walked away, feeling the stallion's eyes on his back. As he rounded the corner of the stable, he nearly collided with Marcus Winters, who was striding purposefully toward the paddock. "Reed," Winters acknowledged with a curt nod, then paused, looking him over more carefully. "You're up early, eager to see how real trainers work?" Noah met his gaze evenly. "Just getting to know the horse." Winters snorted. "That animal isn't looking for a friend. He needs to learn respect and obedience." He gestured to 2 handlers who were approaching with lead ropes and a training whip. "You're welcome to observe from the pavilion again. You might learn something useful." "I appreciate the offer," Noah replied, "but I have preparation to do for my own session." As he walked away, Winters called after him. "Your techniques won't work with this one, Reed. Some horses only respond to force." Noah didn't turn around, but his shoulders tightened almost imperceptibly. He'd heard that assertion countless times throughout his career, and it had yet to prove true. Difficult horses, like difficult people, often had reasons for their behavior that went deeper than simple defiance. Back at his trailer, Noah spent the next few hours reviewing his notes and preparing for his assigned session later that day. At noon, he returned to observe the ongoing training. 2 more professionals had worked with Tempest since Winter's morning session, each employing increasingly forceful methods as the stallion's resistance continued despite their efforts. From the viewing pavilion, Noah could see that Tempest was trembling with exhaustion, foam flecking his midnight coat. Yet still he fought, refusing the bit, rearing when the trainers attempted to place a saddle on his back. His eyes held the wild, panicked look of an animal pushed beyond endurance. Fascinating, isn't he? Noah turned to find a woman standing beside him, tall, athletic, with ash-blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore riding breeches and boots, suggesting she was another of the trainers Thornhill had recruited. "I've never seen a horse with that much fight," she continued, studying Tempest with professional interest. "Most would have submitted by now, or at least shown signs of breaking. Or injured themselves trying to escape," Noah added quietly. She glanced at him, assessing. "You're the wild card, the one Thornhill added to the roster on a whim." She extended her hand. "Eliza Morgan." Noah accepted the handshake. "Noah Reed." "I've heard about your methods," she said, surprising him. "You worked with that Mustang in Wyoming last year, the one that killed its previous owner. Everyone said it couldn't be rehabilitated." "News travels fast in horse circles," Noah acknowledged. "So it's true then? You use that natural horsemanship approach? No force, no dominance, just patience and positive reinforcement?" Before Noah could respond, a commotion in the arena drew their attention. Tempest had broken free from the trainer currently working with him and was galloping in panicked circles, dragging a lead rope. 2 handlers rushed in with catch poles, trying to corner him. "They're going to get someone hurt," Eliza said, shaking her head. "That horse needs sedation before any real work can begin." Noah watched in silence as the handlers finally managed to secure Tempest, though not before one man was knocked to the ground by the stallion's powerful shoulder. They dragged the horse from the arena, his hooves scoring deep trenches in the carefully maintained sand. "My session starts in an hour," Eliza said, checking her watch. "But I doubt he'll be in any condition for productive work after this." She studied Noah curiously. "When is your time slot?" 6 o'clock this evening, though I'm reconsidering that approach." "Oh," she raised an eyebrow. "The constant rotation of different trainers and methods is only increasing his confusion and fear," Noah explained. "He needs consistency, not a new person with new demands every few hours." Eliza looked thoughtful. "You might be right, but good luck convincing Thornhill to change the schedule. He's not known for his flexibility." She gave him a small, professional smile. "I should prepare for my session, slim as the chances are that it will proceed as planned. Good luck with your approach, Reed. I'll be curious to see your results, if you survive long enough to produce any." As she walked away, Noah returned his attention to the now empty arena, planning his own session. By the time 6 o'clock arrived, Tempest had endured 4 more trainers, each with their own aggressive techniques. Noah had observed portions of each session, noting the stallion's responses and the increasing desperation in his behavior. When Noah arrived for his allotted time, he found Williams waiting for him at the arena entrance. "Mr. Thornhill asked me to inform you that several of the other trainers have requested to observe your session," Williams said. "He's granted their request. They'll be watching from the pavilion." Noah glanced up to see 5 or 6 figures seated in the covered area, including Thornhill himself. He nodded to Williams, then turned as handlers led Tempest into the arena. The stallion was barely recognizable from the proud creature of the previous day. His head hung low, his movements mechanical and sluggish. The fire that had made him so formidable was temporarily extinguished by sheer exhaustion. The handlers moved to attach the various training equipment used by the previous professionals: a lunge line, a severe bit, a training whip. Noah held up his hand. "I won't need any of that," he said quietly. The men exchanged doubtful glances. "Sir, this horse is extremely dangerous," one began. "I understand. Please just remove his halter and leave us." "Remove the halter?" The handler looked stunned. "But how will you control him?" "I won't," Noah replied simply. After a moment of hesitation, the handler complied, quickly slipping off the halter and backing away. Both men exited the arena, closing the gate behind them. Noah could hear murmurs from the pavilion, the professional trainers clearly questioning his sanity. Alone in the arena with Tempest, Noah stood perfectly still. The stallion remained where the handlers had left him, head low, sides still heaving from the day's exertions. For several long minutes, neither man nor horse moved. The observers in the pavilion began to shift restlessly. Finally, Noah slowly sat down cross-legged in the sand, exactly as he had done outside the paddock. He made no move toward Tempest, showed no intention of approaching him. Instead, he pulled his journal from his pocket and began to write, acting as if he were completely alone. In the pavilion, the murmurs grew louder. Thornhill leaned forward, his expression a mixture of irritation and curiosity. One trainer laughed outright, nudging his colleague and making a dismissive gesture. 10 minutes passed. Noah continued writing. Tempest hadn't moved, seemingly too exhausted to care about this strange human who made no demands of him. Then, almost imperceptibly, the stallion's head raised slightly. His ears, which had been flat against his skull, flickered forward briefly. Noah still didn't look up. He reached into his pocket and pulled out several sugar cubes, placing them on the sand beside him, before returning to his journal. Another 5 minutes passed. The observers were now openly discussing what they were witnessing, or rather, the lack of action they found so baffling. Then Tempest took a step, just one, in Noah's direction. Then another. His movements were stiff, reluctant, but he was approaching voluntarily. When he reached the nearest sugar cube, he stretched his neck to its full length, snatching the treat while keeping his body as far from Noah as possible. Then, he retreated several steps to consume it. Noah continued writing, still not acknowledging the horse's presence. Tempest approached again, more confidently this time, taking another sugar cube. This process repeated until all the treats were gone. Then, to the astonishment of the observers, the stallion remained nearby, watching Noah with unmistakable interest. Only then did Noah look up, meeting the horse's gaze directly for the first time. "Hello, Tempest," he said quietly. The stallion's ears pricked forward at the sound of his voice, but he didn't retreat. Noah slowly closed his journal and set it aside, then reached into his pocket and produced an apple. He held it in his open palm, not extending his hand toward the horse, but simply making the offering available. Tempest's nostrils flared as he caught the scent. Everyone watching held their breath as the dangerous stallion took one step closer to Noah, then another. With extreme caution, he stretched his neck, reaching for the apple. Noah remained perfectly still as Tempest's lips brushed his palm, taking the fruit with surprising gentleness. "Good boy," Noah said softly, still not moving. The scheduled hour passed with this quiet exchange repeated several times, Noah offering a treat, Tempest accepting it with increasing confidence. By the end of the session, the stallion was standing just a few feet away from the seated man, no longer stretching to his maximum length to maintain distance. When a handler approached the arena gate, signaling that Noah's time was up, the spell was broken. Tempest's head came up, ears back, body tense once more. Noah rose slowly to his feet. "It's all right," he said to Tempest, not to the handler. "We'll continue tomorrow." He walked backward toward the gate, keeping his eyes on the stallion, who watched him with what almost looked like regret. The handlers entered with the halter, and immediately Tempest retreated to the far side of the arena, once again the dangerous, unpredictable creature they expected. As Noah exited, he found Thornhill waiting for him, the other trainers clustered nearby, their expressions ranging from skepticism to grudging curiosity. "What exactly was that supposed to accomplish?" Thornhill demanded. "The beginning of trust," Noah replied simply. "Trust?" Thornhill scoffed. I'm not paying $10 million for a horse that trusts people. I'm paying for one that obeys them. Trust comes before obedience, Noah said. At least the kind that doesn't require constant force to maintain. Winters stepped forward, his face flushed with irritation. This is ridiculous. The horse was simply exhausted from real training. Your little petting zoo approach won't get him under saddle in 3 months. Or ever. Several of the other trainers nodded in agreement, though Eliza Morgan, standing slightly apart from the group, looked thoughtful rather than dismissive. "Mr. Reed," Thornhill said, his tone deceptively pleasant, "while I admire your unique approach, I must insist that you work within the parameters of actual horse training. If you cannot produce measurable progress, I'll be forced to terminate your participation in this endeavor." Noah met his gaze steadily. "With respect, Mr. Thornhill, what you've witnessed today is actual horse training. It's just not the kind you're familiar with." A tense silence followed this statement. Then Thornhill smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Very well. You have 1 week to demonstrate measurable progress using your methods. If Tempest isn't showing significant improvement in his handling by then, you're out." "Defined how?" Noah asked. "What constitutes significant improvement in your view?" Thornhill considered this. "The horse should accept a halter without resistance and respond to basic leading commands. That seems fair, does it not?" Noah nodded. "It does. 1 week." As the group dispersed, Eliza fell into step beside Noah. Bold move, challenging Thornhill directly. "I wasn't challenging him," Noah replied, "just clarifying expectations." Same difference in his world. She studied him with open curiosity. "So what's your story? You're not like the rest of the trainers here." Noah smiled slightly. "Is that a compliment or an observation?" "Both, maybe." She gestured toward his modest truck and trailer, visible in the distance. "You're certainly not in it for the lifestyle." "Neither are you, I'd guess," he replied, noting her practical attire and direct manner. "True enough. I care about the horses, not the prestige." She hesitated, then asked, "Where did you learn your approach? It's similar to some natural horsemanship methods I've studied, but different somehow." They'd reached his trailer, and Noah paused before answering. "Experience mostly. I grew up on a small farm in Montana. My grandfather had a way with difficult horses, not through dominating them, but by understanding them. I learned from watching him." "And now you specialize in the ones everyone else gives up on?" Noah nodded. "Someone has to." "What about you? What's your specialty?" "Dressage, primarily," she replied. "But I've always been interested in rehabilitation cases, horses that have developed behavioral issues due to poor handling or trauma. Like Tempest?" "Yes, though he's an extreme case." She glanced at her watch. "I should go. I have another session scheduled for tomorrow morning." She looked at him directly. "For what it's worth, I think your approach has merit. That horse responded to you in a way I haven't seen him respond to anyone else." After she left, Noah entered his trailer and sat heavily on the narrow bunk. The day had been mentally exhausting, watching Tempest subjected to one harsh training session after another. He opened his journal to record his observations from his own session, noting the stallion's body language, his willingness to approach, the moment when curiosity had overcome fear. A knock on his trailer door interrupted his writing. It was Williams, Thornhill's ever-present assistant. "Mr. Thornhill requests your presence for dinner," Williams announced. Noah raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Dinner?" "At the main house, 7:30. Dress is business casual." Williams handed him a small map of the estate with the house circled. "Please be punctual." Before Noah could respond, Williams was already walking away. Noah glanced down at his worn jeans and work shirt, wondering if he even owned anything that qualified as business casual. He'd have to make do with what he had. The invitation was unexpected and likely not social in nature. Thornhill wanted something, information perhaps, or simply to size up the unconventional trainer more thoroughly. Either way, Noah knew he needed to be cautious. Men like Thornhill didn't appreciate being challenged, and Noah's methods represented a direct contradiction to everything the millionaire believed about how the world worked. At precisely 7:30, Noah arrived at Thornhill's mansion, having changed into the cleanest clothes he had: dark jeans, a button-down shirt, and a simple brown leather jacket that had belonged to his grandfather. He felt distinctly out of place as a uniformed staff member led him through the sprawling mansion with its soaring ceilings, priceless artwork, and gleaming marble floors. The dining room could have comfortably seated 30, but tonight only 4 places were set at one end of the massive table. Thornhill was already present, along with Eliza Morgan and Marcus Winters. The millionaire rose as Noah entered, his smile practiced and hollow. "Mr. Reed, welcome. I'm glad you could join us for a more civilized interaction." Thornhill gestured to an empty chair. "Please sit." Noah took the indicated seat, noting that Winters was watching him with barely concealed contempt while Eliza's expression remained politely neutral. A server appeared immediately to fill his water glass and offer wine, which he declined. "I thought it might be valuable for us to discuss our various approaches to Tempest's training in a more relaxed setting," Thornhill explained, his tone suggesting this was a reasonable professional gathering rather than what it clearly was, an intimidation tactic. "I appreciate the invitation," Noah replied simply. Dinner was served, an elaborate multi-course affair that seemed excessive for what was ostensibly a business meeting. Throughout the first course, the conversation remained general. Discussions of the equestrian world's latest competitions, breeding lines, and market trends. Noah participated minimally, aware that the others were assessing him, looking for weaknesses or inconsistencies. "So, Reed," Winters said finally, setting down his fork, "I'm curious about your background. Your methods are unorthodox. Where exactly did you train?" The question was a trap, designed to highlight Noah's lack of formal credentials. Thornhill leaned forward slightly, equally interested in the answer. "I didn't attend any prestigious academies, if that's what you're asking," Noah replied evenly. "My education came from direct experience. I started working with rescue horses when I was 15. Animals that had been abused, neglected, or simply misunderstood by their owners." "Self-taught, then," Winters said with a thin smile. "How charmingly rustic." "Not entirely," Noah countered. "I studied under Javier Mendoza for 3 years. This name had an immediate effect on the table. Mendoza was a near-legendary figure in certain circles, a reclusive trainer who accepted very few students and whose methods with troubled horses bordered on miraculous according to those who had witnessed them. "Mendoza doesn't take students," Winters said flatly. "He took me," Noah said simply, offering no further explanation. Thornhill studied him with new interest. "And what brought you to my little competition, Mr. Reed? Surely it wasn't the money. Someone with your philosophy hardly seems motivated by material gain." "I heard about Tempest," Noah replied. "A horse with his reputation draws attention, especially in my line of work." "And what exactly is your line of work?" Eliza asked, speaking up for the first time since dinner began. "I rehabilitate horses that others have given up on," Noah said. "The ones labeled dangerous, untrainable, or ruined." "Like that Mustang in Wyoming?" she prompted. Noah nodded. "Among others." "What Mustang?" Thornhill inquired, looking between them. "A wild stallion that was captured in a BLM roundup 3 years ago," Eliza explained. "After killing one handler and seriously injuring 2 others, he was scheduled to be euthanized. Then Reed stepped in." Thornhill's eyebrows rose. "And now that horse is working with veterans suffering from PTSD," Noah said quietly. "He's one of their most effective therapy animals." Winters scoffed. "One success doesn't validate your entire methodology." "No, but 27 does," Noah replied. "That's how many lost cause horses I've rehabilitated in the past 5 years. Not a single failure." A silence fell over the table as this information was absorbed. Thornhill broke it with a cold laugh. "Well, there's a first time for everything, isn't there?" He turned to Winters. "Marcus, tell us about your progress with Tempest. I understand you've developed a comprehensive plan for the coming weeks. The conversation shifted to Winter's approach. A rigid, escalating program of pressure and negative reinforcement designed to break Tempest's resistance through systematic application of increasingly forceful techniques. Noah listened without comment, though his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly at certain details. "And you, Ms. Morgan?" Thornhill prompted when Winters had finished. "Your thoughts on the stallion's potential?" Eliza set down her wine glass carefully. Tempest is exceptional, intelligent, athletic, with natural collection that would make him outstanding for dressage. But his trauma runs deep. I believe it predates your ownership, Mr. Thornhill. Meaning? Something happened to that horse before you acquired him, she clarified. The level of fear he displays around humans, particularly men, suggests prior abuse. Thornhill waved a dismissive hand. The Bedouin trader assured me Tempest came from a prized bloodline. He was simply never properly broken. With respect, Noah interjected. Ms. Morgan is right. Tempest's behavior isn't simple defiance. It's a trauma response. And I suppose you've deduced this from one session of sitting in the sand feeding him sugar cubes, Winters said sarcastically. Noah met his gaze without flinching. Partly from that, partly from watching how he reacts to specific stimuli. He's particularly terrified of the whip and certain types of bits. That suggests specific negative experiences. If that's true, Thornhill said, how would you propose to overcome it? We have less than 3 months to transform him into a competition-ready mount. 3 months isn't realistic, Noah stated bluntly. Not for the level of rehabilitation Tempest needs. Thornhill's face hardened. I'm not interested in what's realistic, Mr. Reed. I'm interested in results. The deadline stands. The remainder of dinner passed in tense conversation, with Winters dominating the discussion of training techniques while Noah remained largely silent. Eliza occasionally asked thoughtful questions, but seemed careful not to align herself too obviously with either approach. As the evening drew to a close, Thornhill invited them to adjourn to his study for brandy. Winters and Eliza accepted, but Noah declined politely. I need to check on something at my trailer, he explained, and I have an early start tomorrow. Thornhill's smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course, Williams will show you out. Outside, the night air was cool and refreshing after the stifling atmosphere of the dinner. As Noah walked back toward his trailer, he heard footsteps behind him and turned to find Eliza hurrying to catch up. I bailed on the brandy too, she said with a small smile. Not my scene. They fell into step together, walking in silence for a few moments before she spoke again. You studied with Mendoza? Really? Noah nodded. After my grandfather died, I was at a loose end. Mendoza had been his friend years ago. He took me in, more as a favor to my grandfather's memory than out of any belief in my potential. But over time, he shrugged. That explains a lot, Eliza said thoughtfully. Your methods aren't just intuitive, they're systematic, even if most people can't see the system. She hesitated, then added, I've been watching you with Tempest. The way you position your body, your breathing, even where you place the treats, it's all deliberate, isn't it? Yes. I thought so. They had reached the area where Noah's trailer was parked. Eliza stopped, turning to face him directly. Look, I know we're technically competitors, but I'd like to understand your approach better. Would you be willing to let me observe your morning sessions? Not the official ones, the early ones before the handlers come. Noah studied her, trying to discern her motivation. She met his gaze openly, without guile. Why? He asked finally. Because Tempest deserves the best chance he can get, she replied. And I'm beginning to think that might be you. After a moment's consideration, Noah nodded. Meet me at Tempest's paddock at 4:45 tomorrow morning. I'll be there, Eliza promised, then turned and walked away toward the guest quarters where the other trainers were staying. Noah watched her go, uncertain whether he'd made the right decision. Trust didn't come easily to him, especially in an environment as competitive and potentially hostile as Thornhill's estate. But there had been something genuine in Eliza's request, a concern for Tempest that mirrored his own. The following morning, the eastern sky was just beginning to lighten when Noah approached Tempest's paddock. To his surprise, Eliza was already there, dressed practically in jeans and a fleece jacket, her hair pulled back in its usual ponytail. "You're early," he observed. She shrugged. "I wanted to observe the horse before he knew we were here, his natural state, without human influence." Noah approved of this approach. Together they watched Tempest for several minutes. The stallion was moving freely around his enclosure, occasionally pausing to graze or look out over the estate's rolling hills. His movements were more fluid than they had been after yesterday's grueling training sessions, though he still favored his left front leg slightly. An observation Noah noted in his journal. "He's beautiful," Eliza said softly. "Such presence. You can see why Thornhill wants him so badly." Noah nodded, then retrieved apples and sugar cubes from his bag. "I'm going to approach now. Stay back until I signal you. He's still wary of new people." She moved to a position where she could observe without being obvious, and Noah walked slowly to his usual spot by the fence. Tempest noticed him immediately, head coming up sharply. But instead of retreating, the stallion approached the fence directly, his stride purposeful. Noah smiled slightly. "Good morning to you too," he said quietly, sitting down in his usual spot. To Eliza's amazement, Tempest came right to the fence, stretching his neck to sniff at Noah's jacket. Noah remained still, allowing the investigation. After a moment, he slowly reached into his pocket and produced a sugar cube, offering it on his flat palm. Tempest took it delicately, then remained nearby, clearly expecting more. "You've made remarkable progress," Eliza said, keeping her voice low. Noah gestured for her to join him, moving very slowly. "Keep your body language relaxed and don't look directly at him at first," he instructed. Eliza approached with careful steps, following Noah's guidance. Tempest tensed initially, taking a step back, eyes wary as he assessed this new human. "It's all right," Noah told him. "She's a friend." Eliza settled on the ground a few feet from Noah, angling her body slightly away from the horse as Noah had done. She followed his lead, acting as if she were simply enjoying the morning, not focusing on Tempest at all. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "We wait," Noah replied. "Everything has to be his choice." Over the next half hour, Noah demonstrated his approach. Tempest gradually became comfortable with Eliza's presence, though he kept a greater distance from her than from Noah. When the stallion finally accepted an apple slice from her palm, the smile that lit her face was genuine and unguarded. "It seems so simple," she said, watching Tempest retreat a few steps to eat his treat. "But it's not, is it?" "No," Noah agreed. "There's a language to it. Reading the micro-expressions, understanding the threshold between productive discomfort and counterproductive fear. It takes time to learn." "Time Thornhill isn't willing to give," she said, her smile fading. "1 week to prove your methods, and even then, he expects Tempest competition ready in 3 months." "I know." Noah's expression remained calm, but determination hardened his voice. "That's why I need to change the parameters." "How?" Eliza asked, intrigued. "By showing him something the other trainers can't deliver, a genuine connection with Tempest. If I can demonstrate that the horse responds to me in ways he doesn't respond to anyone else, Thornhill's pragmatism will override his impatience. He wants results, regardless of how they're achieved." "That's a big gamble," Eliza observed. "What if Winters or one of the others gets lucky, forces some semblance of compliance through their methods?" "That's a risk I have to take," Noah admitted, "but I don't think it will happen. Tempest has endured 3 years of traditional training approaches without breaking. He's not going to suddenly give in now." Just then, they heard the sound of vehicles approaching, the other trainers arriving for their morning sessions. Tempest heard it too, his head coming up, body instantly tense. "We should go," Noah said, gathering his things. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for allowing me to observe," Eliza replied. As they walked away from the paddock, she added, "I'm scheduled to work with him at 11 today. What would you think if I modified my approach somewhat?" Noah glanced at her, understanding her meaning. "You might face pushback from Thornhill." She shrugged. "I can handle Thornhill. And it would give Tempest at least one session today that doesn't undo your progress." Over the following days, a pattern emerged. Noah would work with Tempest in the early morning hours, sometimes with Eliza observing, sometimes alone. The stallion's trust in him grew steadily, advancing from accepting treats to allowing Noah to stand close beside him at the fence, then to entering the paddock and sitting quietly while Tempest grazed nearby. During the official training rotation, most trainers continued their forceful methods, but Eliza had indeed modified her approach. She didn't attempt to fully adopt Noah's techniques, that would have been too obvious a departure, but she eliminated the most stressful elements from her sessions and incorporated more patience and positive reinforcement. Winters, noticing the change in her methods, confronted her after one session. "You're going soft on the animal," he accused. "Thornhill won't be impressed with half measures." "I'm being strategic," she countered. "Wearing him down isn't working. We need to try something else." Winters snorted. "You've been spending too much time with Reed. His sentimental approach is infecting your judgment." Nevertheless, by the fifth morning, something remarkable had happened. When Noah entered Tempest's paddock and sat in his usual spot, the stallion approached and, for the first time, voluntarily touched his muzzle to Noah's outstretched hand in a gesture of tentative trust. It was a breakthrough moment, one that brought an unexpected tightness to Noah's throat. That afternoon, at his official training session, Noah decided to attempt the first milestone Thornhill had established, haltering Tempest without resistance. The other trainers gathered to watch, skepticism evident in their expressions. Even Eliza looked concerned. "Are you sure about this?" she asked quietly as Noah prepared to enter the arena. "It might be too soon." "I need to show Thornhill progress on his terms," Noah replied. "Today is the 6th day." Tempest was already in the arena, having just endured a particularly harsh session with another trainer. He stood at the far end, head low, sides heaving. Noah entered alone, carrying only a simple rope halter. No whips, no lunge lines, none of the control devices the other trainers relied on. The watching professionals murmured among themselves, most predicting failure. Thornhill sat forward in his chair, eyes narrowed. Noah walked to the center of the arena and simply stood there. For long minutes, neither he nor Tempest moved. The stallion watched him warily, obviously associating the arena with the stress and pain of training. The observers grew restless, several checking their watches or shifting impatiently in their seats. Finally, Noah did something unexpected. He sat down in the sand, set the halter beside him, and pulled an apple from his pocket. He began cutting it slowly, the soft sound of his knife against the fruit audible in the silent arena. Tempest's ears pricked forward at the familiar routine, a moment of recognition piercing through his arena-induced anxiety. "This is absurd," one trainer muttered loudly. "He's wasting everyone's time." Thornhill made no comment, but his expression darkened as minutes continued to pass with no apparent progress. In the arena, Noah remained seated, occasionally placing apple slices on the ground beside him, his attention seemingly focused on his task rather than the horse. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, Tempest began to relax. His head lifted slightly, nostrils flaring as he caught the scent of the apple. He took one hesitant step toward Noah, then another. The observers grew silent again, watching with grudging interest as the stallion slowly approached the seated man. When Tempest was about 10 feet away, he paused, clearly conflicted. The arena represented fear and pain, yet here was the one human who had shown him nothing but patience and kindness. Noah glanced up, then immediately returned his attention to the apple, offering no pressure, no expectation. After what seemed an eternity, Tempest took another step forward, then another, until he was close enough to stretch his neck and take an apple slice from the ground. Noah remained still as the stallion retreated a few steps to eat, then approached again for another piece. This dance continued until Tempest was standing just a few feet from Noah, no longer retreating after taking each treat. Noah slowly reached for the halter, making no attempt to hide his movement. The stallion tensed immediately, eyes fixed on the dreaded object. "It's all right," Noah said quietly, his voice carrying in the hushed arena. "You know this won't hurt you." He held the halter in one hand, an apple slice in the other. Tempest's attention shifted between the two, desire warring with fear. Noah waited, offering neither option more prominently than the other, a choice freely given. Finally, Tempest stretched toward the apple. As he took it, Noah slowly raised the halter, allowing the horse to see and smell it. Instead of attempting to put it on immediately, he simply held it near Tempest's head, letting him become accustomed to its presence. Then, with a gentleness that belied the tension of the moment, Noah carefully slipped the halter over Tempest's nose and secured it behind his ears. The stallion stood perfectly still, neither resisting nor attempting to flee. Noah allowed the lead rope to hang loosely, making no attempt to direct the horse or demonstrate control. Instead, he simply stood beside Tempest, one hand resting lightly on his neck, a point of connection rather than dominance. A collective murmur rose from the observers. Eliza was smiling openly. Winters looked stunned. Thornhill's expression was unreadable, his eyes narrowed in calculation. After a few moments, Noah gently removed the halter and stepped away, giving Tempest space. The stallion remained nearby, making no attempt to retreat to the far side of the arena. Noah knelt again, offering one final apple slice from his palm, which Tempest accepted with remarkable delicacy. Then Noah walked backward toward the gate, maintaining eye contact with the horse until he exited the arena. As handlers cautiously entered to retrieve Tempest, Noah found Thornhill waiting for him outside the gate. "Interesting demonstration, Mr. Reed," the millionaire said, his tone neutral. "Though I notice you made no attempt to actually lead the horse." "One step at a time," Noah replied. "Today, acceptance of the halter without fear. Tomorrow, the beginning of leading. Rushing the process will only set us back." Thornhill studied him for a long moment. "Very well. You've met my first condition, barely. You may continue your work for now." With that, he turned and walked away, followed by Williams and several of the other trainers. Winters lingered, his expression a mixture of annoyance and reluctant respect. "Lucky," he said dismissively. "The horse was tired, that's all. Don't mistake exhaustion for progress." Once he'd gone, Eliza approached, her smile genuine. "That was remarkable," she said quietly. "I've never seen anything like it. You had everyone holding their breath." "It wasn't a performance," Noah replied, watching as Tempest was led back to his paddock. "No, but it made an impression, which is what you needed to do." She glanced in the direction Thornhill had gone. "You've bought yourself more time, but be careful. He doesn't like being proven wrong." Later that evening, Noah was making notes in his journal outside his trailer when Williams appeared. "Mr. Thornhill would like to speak with you," the assistant announced. "He's at the main stable." Noah followed Williams across the grounds to the impressive main equestrian complex. Inside, the 30-stall stable gleamed with polished wood and brass, the air fragrant with premium bedding and high-quality feed. Thornhill stood in the center aisle, inspecting a magnificent bay gelding held by a groom. "Ah, Mr. Reed," Thornhill said as Noah approached. "Thank you for joining me. I wanted to show you something." He gestured for Noah to follow as he walked toward a large indoor arena connected to the stable. Inside, a rider was putting a horse through an advanced dressage routine. Perfect collection, seamless transitions, absolute precision in every movement. Noah recognized the rider as one of the trainers participating in the Tempest Challenge, though not one of the more aggressive ones. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Thornhill said, watching the performance with evident satisfaction. "This is what I expect from my horses. Total harmony between horse and rider. Absolute obedience to the most subtle cues. This is what I want from Tempest." "It's impressive," Noah agreed. but it requires years of training, not months. Thornhill turned to face him directly. Mr. Reed, I'm a businessman. I understand the concept of investment and return. What I saw today was intriguing, different from what I expected, but I need to know if your methods can deliver the end result I require. They can, Noah said confidently, but not on your original timeline. You're asking me to extend the 3-month deadline? I'm asking you to recognize reality. Tempest isn't like other horses. His past, whatever happened before you acquired him, has left him deeply traumatized. Rushing his training will only reinforce that trauma. Thornhill was silent for a moment, watching the dressage display with a calculating expression. What timeline would you propose? A year, minimum, Noah replied. Possibly longer. Thornhill laughed. A year? Most of the other trainers insist they can have him under saddle within weeks. And do you believe them? Noah asked quietly. After 3 years of failed attempts? The millionaire's amusement faded. He dismissed the dressage rider with a wave, and once they were alone in the arena, he spoke more candidly. Let me be direct, Mr. Reed. I purchased Tempest because he was exceptional, a stallion with bloodlines and natural talent that could transform my breeding program. The price I paid reflected that potential. 3 years of failed training have made me the laughingstock of certain circles. I need that horse performing, and I need it sooner rather than later. I understand, Noah said, meeting his gaze steadily. But forcing the issue won't get you what you want. It will only break him, turn him into a shell of what he could be. Is that really worth the timeline? Thornhill studied him for a long moment. You genuinely care about this animal, don't you? It's not just professional pride. I care about all the horses I work with, Noah replied simply. Even knowing you could walk away with $10 million if you succeed. The money has never been my motivation. Thornhill shook his head, seemingly baffled by this concept. What if I offered you a different arrangement? Become Tempest's exclusive trainer. Work with him on your timeline, using your methods. I'll provide accommodations here on the estate and a generous monthly stipend. If you achieve the results I want, even if it takes a year, the $10 million is still yours. Noah was surprised by the offer. And the other trainers? Will be compensated for their time and dismissed, Thornhill said with a dismissive wave. Most of them are already growing frustrated anyway. Winters is the only one still confident, and between us, his methods seem to be making the situation worse, not better. What about Eliza Morgan? Thornhill raised an eyebrow. Ms. Morgan? You think she should stay? I think Tempest responds well to her. Having a second person he trusts would be valuable for his rehabilitation. Noah carefully avoided mentioning how Eliza had modified her approach to align more with his own methods. Thornhill considered this suggestion with calculating eyes. You two have become quite the team, haven't you? Interesting. After a moment, he nodded. Very well, Ms. Morgan can stay on as your assistant if she's amenable. I'll have Williams prepare the paperwork for our new arrangement. As Thornhill walked away, Noah wondered if he'd made the right decision. Committing to a long-term position on the estate meant putting his own life and other work on hold indefinitely. Yet the alternative, leaving Tempest to trainers who would continue to traumatize him, was unthinkable. The following morning, Noah met Eliza at their usual pre-dawn spot near Tempest's paddock and explained Thornhill's offer. He wants me to stay on as your assistant? She looked surprised, then thoughtful. That's unexpected. It was my suggestion, Noah admitted. You have a natural affinity with horses, and Tempest already shows signs of trusting you. But I understand if you'd rather not commit to such an open-ended arrangement. Actually, I'm intrigued, she replied. It would be a unique opportunity to learn your methods more thoroughly. And frankly, I've grown attached to that stubborn stallion. She hesitated, then asked, Are you sure this is what you want? Working for Thornhill long-term won't be easy. He's not known for his patience or understanding. I'm doing it for Tempest, Noah said simply. Thornhill is just a means to that end. Later that day, the other trainers were informed of the new arrangement. Most accepted the news with professional resignation, They would be paid in full for the contracted time, regardless of the early termination. Winters, however, was furious. "This is absurd," he fumed, confronting Thornhill directly as the trainers were packing their equipment. "Reed is a charlatan. His methods might produce a docile pet, but never a competition-level performance horse. You're being taken in by parlor tricks." Thornhill's response was cool and final. "I appreciate your concern, Marcus, but I've made my decision. Mr. Reed has shown the most promising results so far. I'm choosing to invest in that approach." Winters turned his anger toward Noah. "You won't succeed," he said, his voice low and threatening. "That horse is dangerous, and your soft approach won't change his fundamental nature. When he hurts someone, possibly you, Thornhill will realize his mistake." After the other trainers had departed, an odd calm settled over the estate. Noah moved into a small guest cottage close to Tempest's stable, while Eliza took a room in the main staff quarters. Thornhill, satisfied with the new arrangement, left for a business trip to Europe, leaving Williams to oversee the estate in his absence. Without the daily rotation of different trainers and methods, Noah established a consistent routine for Tempest. Each morning began with quiet time in the paddock, allowing the stallion to approach on his own terms. As the days passed, Tempest grew increasingly comfortable with both Noah and Eliza, eventually accepting the halter without hesitation and following on a loose lead around the paddock. By the end of the second week, they had progressed to walking Tempest around the wider estate grounds, exposing him gradually to new environments and situations. The stallion remained cautious, but no longer showed the extreme fear responses that had characterized his behavior before. "He's like a different horse," Eliza observed one evening as they sat outside Noah's cottage, reviewing the day's progress. "Though I'm still curious about what happened to him before Thornhill bought him. The way he reacts to certain triggers, loud voices, sudden movements, specific equipment, suggests a very specific kind of trauma." Noah nodded, his expression troubled. "I've been thinking the same thing. The story about buying him from Bedouin traders doesn't add up. A horse from that background would have different reactions. Tempest's behavior suggests exposure to modern training methods, harsh ones. Do you think Thornhill knows the truth? Maybe. Or maybe he just doesn't care as long as he gets what he wants in the end." Noah closed his journal and sighed. "Either way, our job remains the same. Help Tempest overcome whatever happened and build his trust in humans again." As the weeks passed, their progress continued. Tempest now readily accepted grooming, stood calmly for the farrier, and had even begun preliminary work with a soft surcingle, the first step toward eventually introducing a saddle. Noah was careful never to rush, always giving the stallion time to adjust to each new element before moving forward. Eliza proved to be an invaluable partner, not only in the practical work with Tempest, but as a sounding board for Noah's ideas and concerns. Their professional collaboration gradually evolved into a friendship based on mutual respect and shared purpose. Noah, typically reserved about his personal life, found himself opening up to her about his past, his childhood on the small Montana farm, his grandfather's teachings, the years with Mendoza. In turn, Eliza shared her own journey, her privileged upbringing in an equestrian family, her rebellion against conventional training methods after witnessing their damaging effects, her struggle to establish herself as a trainer who prioritized the horse's well-being over quick results. One evening, about 6 weeks into their work with Tempest, they were sitting on the paddock fence watching the stallion graze peacefully in the twilight when Eliza asked a question that caught Noah off guard. "Why do you do this? Work with the horses everyone else has given up on?" Noah was silent for a long moment, considering his answer. "When I was 14, he finally said, my grandfather took in a mare that had been severely abused. She was considered dangerous, had injured several people trying to handle her. Everyone said she should be put down." Eliza listened intently as he continued. "My grandfather saw something different in her. Not a dangerous animal, but a creature in pain, lashing out from fear and betrayal. He spent months just sitting near her paddock, talking to her, gaining her trust bit by bit. I watched him, learned from him. When she finally allowed him to touch her, to lead her, to eventually ride her, it was like witnessing a miracle. The memory brought a rare smile to Noah's face. That mare lived with us for 12 more years, became the gentlest, most reliable horse on our farm. When my grandfather died, she was the only one who seemed to understand my grief. She'd stand beside me for hours while I sat in her paddock, sometimes crying, sometimes just sitting in silence. He met Eliza's gaze directly. So I do this because I've seen what's possible when you give an animal the time and space to heal, when you recognize their intelligence and capacity for trust, even after humans have broken that trust repeatedly. Eliza's eyes were soft in the fading light. That's a beautiful reason. Their moment of connection was interrupted by the sound of a car approaching, a sleek black luxury sedan that pulled up near the paddock. Williams stepped out, his expression unusually serious. "Mr. Reed, Ms. Morgan," he greeted them formally. "Mr. Thornhill has returned from Europe. He would like to see a demonstration of Tempest's progress tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Noah exchanged a glance with Eliza. This was earlier than they had expected. "We'll be ready," he assured Williams, though inwardly he felt a flicker of concern. While Tempest had made remarkable progress for a horse with his history, they were still months away from the kind of advanced training Thornhill ultimately wanted. Would he understand and appreciate the subtle but significant changes in the stallion's behavior, or would he see only how far they still had to go? The following morning dawned clear and cool, a perfect day for a demonstration. Noah and Eliza arrived at Tempest's paddock early, wanting to ensure the stallion was relaxed and comfortable before Thornhill's arrival. They found him alert and responsive, showing none of the tension that had once characterized his interactions with humans. "Whatever happens today," Noah said quietly as they prepared, "remember how far he's come. That's what matters." Eliza nodded, understanding the subtext. Thornhill might not appreciate the subtle but profound changes in Tempest's demeanor and behavior. He might see only what remained to be done, not what had already been accomplished. At precisely 9 o'clock, a small procession appeared, Thornhill in an immaculate riding suit, Williams following at a respectful distance, and to Noah's surprise, Marcus Winters, looking smugly confident. "Good morning," Thornhill greeted them, his expression revealing nothing. "I trust you're prepared to show me what my investment has produced over these past weeks." "We are," Noah replied calmly, though he was acutely aware of Winters' presence and what it might signify. "But I'd like to understand your expectations for today's demonstration." Thornhill gestured toward the arena. "Show me his progress. I want to see exactly where we stand." As they walked, Thornhill explained that he had invited Winters back to provide an objective professional assessment of Tempest's development. The implication was clear. He wasn't entirely confident in Noah's approach and wanted a second opinion. In the arena, Noah began with the basics. Tempest followed him willingly on a loose lead, responding to subtle cues, showing none of the anxiety that had once made him impossible to handle. Noah demonstrated how the stallion now accepted touch along his entire body, stood patiently for grooming, and had begun preliminary work with the surcingle. Throughout the demonstration, Winters made occasional derisive sounds, clearly unimpressed. Thornhill remained expressionless, watching with calculated intensity. "As you can see," Noah explained, "we've established a foundation of trust and basic training concepts. From here, we can begin more advanced work, gradually introducing the saddle and eventually a rider." "Gradually," Winters interjected, the word dripping with sarcasm. "At this rate, Mr. Thornhill, you might see someone on that horse by next decade." Thornhill held up a hand, silencing him. "Mr. Reed has certainly achieved something I haven't seen before. Tempest is undeniably calmer, more manageable." He paused, then added, "But I must question whether this approach will ever produce the competition-level performance I require." "With respect, Mr. Thornhill," Noah replied, "you can't build a skyscraper on a weak foundation. What we're doing now is essential for any future training to succeed." Thornhill nodded, though he looked far from convinced. "I understand your philosophy, but my patience has limits. I'd like to see something more substantial, a clear indication that Tempest can progress beyond basic handling." Noah exchanged a glance with Eliza. They had been working on a more advanced exercise, though it wasn't yet perfected. After a moment's hesitation, he decided to attempt it. "Eliza, would you bring the ground poles, please?" She nodded and quickly set up a simple line of low poles in the center of the arena. Noah then did something unexpected. He unclipped the lead rope from Tempest's halter, effectively giving the stallion freedom of movement within the enclosed space. Winters leaned toward Thornhill. "This is reckless," he muttered audibly. "That horse is still dangerous." Noah ignored the comment, focusing entirely on Tempest. Standing about 15 feet from the stallion, he raised his hand in a subtle gesture and clicked his tongue softly. Tempest's ears pricked forward, his attention fixed on Noah. With another small gesture, Noah invited the horse forward. To the astonishment of the observers, Tempest moved toward him willingly, without any physical connection. When Noah gestured toward the ground poles, the stallion walked calmly over them, responding to nothing more than body language and quiet verbal cues. "Good boy," Noah said softly, as Tempest completed the simple pattern and returned to stand beside him. The stallion lowered his head, allowing Noah to stroke his neck, a gesture of complete trust that would have been unthinkable just weeks before. Even Winters appeared momentarily speechless. Thornhill's expression had shifted from skepticism to genuine interest. "That was impressive," the millionaire admitted, "though still quite basic compared to the level of training I ultimately need." "But it demonstrates something crucial," Eliza interjected. "Tempest is choosing to work with Noah. He's not being forced or coerced. That willingness is the foundation for everything that follows." Thornhill considered this, then turned to Winters. "Your assessment?" The trainer's face hardened. "Parlor tricks. Nothing that translates to serious competitive riding. And frankly, I question whether Reed here has been entirely forthcoming about his progress." "Meaning?" Thornhill prompted. "Meaning I find it convenient that we're seeing this docile behavior only after Reed has had exclusive access to the horse for weeks. Who knows what methods he's really using when no one's watching." Noah felt a flare of anger but kept his expression neutral. Eliza, however, stepped forward. "That's absurd," she said firmly. "I've been with Noah every step of the way. His methods are exactly what you've seen, consistent, patient, and respectful of the horse." Winters smirked. "No offense, Ms. Morgan, but you've clearly been won over by Reed's approach. You're hardly an objective witness." Before she could respond, Thornhill intervened. "Enough. I appreciate everyone's input, but the decision is mine." He studied Tempest thoughtfully. "The horse does appear significantly changed. However," he was interrupted by the arrival of Williams, who hurried into the arena carrying a folder. "Excuse me, sir," the assistant said, slightly breathless. "You asked me to gather all the background information on Tempest's acquisition. I found something that might interest you." Thornhill took the folder, frowning slightly as he reviewed its contents. His expression darkened with each page he turned. "It seems," he said finally, looking up with cold anger, "that I was misled about Tempest's history. He wasn't a prized but unbroken stallion from Bedouin breeders." His gaze shifted to Winters. "He was previously owned by a training operation in Spain. Your brother-in-law's facility, if I'm not mistaken, Marcus." Winters's face paled slightly. "I don't see the relevance." "The relevance," Thornhill continued, his voice frigid, "is that Tempest was already a trained dressage prospect when your brother-in-law's operation acquired him. After a serious accident involving a stable hand, they attempted to retrain him using extreme methods. When that failed, they sold him to the Moroccan traders who subsequently offered him to me, conveniently omitting this history." He turned to Noah, his expression grim. "It appears you were correct, Mr. Reed. Tempest's issues aren't a matter of being unbroken. They're the result of trauma and abusive handling. Noah absorbed this information with a mixture of vindication and sadness. It confirmed what he had suspected from the beginning but offered no satisfaction. The damage done to Tempest had been deliberate and prolonged. "Did you know about this, Winters?" Thornhill demanded. The trainer's expression was answer enough, a mixture of defiance and discomfort. "I knew my brother-in-law had worked with the horse previously, yes. But it was mere coincidence that you acquired him later. A coincidence that you failed to mention during 3 years of consulting on his training," Thornhill observed coldly. "A coincidence that led you to recommend the very methods that had traumatized him in the first place." Winters had no response to this. Thornhill dismissed him with a curt gesture, then turned back to Noah and Eliza. "It seems I owe you an apology, Mr. Reed. Your assessment of Tempest's condition was more accurate than I could have known." He looked at the stallion with new understanding. "How does this information change your approach?" "It confirms what we've been doing is right," Noah replied. "Now that we understand the specific sources of his trauma, we can address them more directly. But the core of the process remains the same, rebuilding his trust, one small step at a time." Thornhill nodded slowly. "Very well. I'm officially extending your contract, with the timeline you requested. 1 year, possibly more. The $10 million offer stands, but with a modification. It will be awarded when Tempest is ready for advanced training, regardless of how long that takes." 6 months later, on a perfect spring morning, Tempest stood calmly in the center of the arena, a saddle on his back for the first time since his rehabilitation began. Noah stood beside him, one hand resting lightly on the stallion's gleaming neck. Eliza approached slowly, her movements deliberate and confident. "Ready?" she asked quietly. Noah nodded, then turned to Tempest. "This is Eliza," he told the horse, though of course they were already well acquainted. "She's going to ride you today, just for a little while." With exquisite care, Eliza mounted, settling gently into the saddle. Tempest's ears flicked back momentarily, then forward again. He stood steady, showing none of the panic that had once made him infamous. From the viewing pavilion, Thornhill watched with undisguised amazement as Eliza guided Tempest through his first ridden steps in years. A simple walk around the arena, the stallion moving with the natural grace and presence that had made him so valuable. "Extraordinary," Thornhill murmured. "Worth every penny of that 10 million. But Noah, walking beside Tempest with the lead rope hanging loose, wasn't thinking about the money. He was watching the proud arch of the stallion's neck, the calm confidence in his stride, the absence of fear in his eyes. That transformation, from broken to whole, from terrified to trusting, was the real victory. Later, as they turned Tempest out in his paddock to enjoy the sunshine, Eliza joined Noah at the fence. "So," she said with a smile, "what will you do with $10 million? Noah watched Tempest trot happily across the paddock, then break into a jubilant canter, powerful and free. "Buy a bigger piece of land," he replied. "Start a sanctuary for horses like him, the ones everyone else has given up on." Eliza's hand found his on the fence rail. "Need a partner for that venture?" Noah turned to her, seeing the same dedication, the same passion that had brought them together over Tempest's rehabilitation. "I think I already have one," he said softly. In the paddock, Tempest galloped along the fence line, then circled back toward them, slowing to a walk as he approached. He stretched his neck over the fence, nuzzling Noah's shoulder gently, a gesture of affection that would have seemed impossible a year before. Some horses, like some people, just needed someone to believe in them when no one else would.